Welcome to the Higher Ed Demand Gen podcast, helping higher education marketing leaders share knowledge about learning, strategies, and tactics that are relevant today. See what you can learn today by listening to one of our episodes.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Higher Ed Demand Gen podcast, hosted by Concept 3D. On this podcast, we discuss higher ed marketing topics on creating and capturing demand. Before we jump in, we have a quick message from our sponsors. So Concept 3D's purpose is to foster connections through technology, elevating the way business connects with their community by leveraging the power of events and location. If your school or institution needs an updated interactive map, virtual tour, or centralized events calendar, please reach out to concept3d.com. Looking forward to hearing from you. Great. Well, let me introduce myself. My name is Shiro, and I will be your host today. Today, I'm very, very thrilled to introduce our guest speaker. He's an author, Web3 educator, speaker, and content marketer. He's currently serving as the Director of Content Strategy and Assessment at the University of Rochester. Welcome to the show, Brian Piper.
Thank you so much, Shiro. I appreciate the opportunity.
And before we jump into these amazing topics, I love to ask the question, what do you love about higher ed?
A great question. And I actually came into higher ed from a military contracting company. And I would go to events and talk with other people in the industry. And the thing in defense contracting is no one talks about what they're doing or what they're working on or how things are going. And I came into higher ed and went to my first conference, and everyone just shared what they were working on and what tools they were using and what was working well and what wasn't working well. And I think that's the thing that really surprises me, is that everyone is just looking for ways to make things better and to do things better and to provide more value to our students and our faculty. So that's what I really like about the community, is just everyone's willingness to share and help each other.
That's amazing. Yeah, and it's been awesome running the podcast, and everyone's been pretty transparent with me as well. So I echo that same emotion. Thanks for sharing that. And I know you have a wealth of knowledge in content marketing, and we're going to cover some content marketing related outcomes today. But I wanted to get your perspective, in regards to higher ed. What does great content marketing look like?
I mean, content marketing is all about telling a story, but it's about providing information for your users that helps them solve a problem, helps them answer a question that they have. So that's one of the things we always focus on whenever we're creating new content, is really trying to focus on who we're writing that content for, what questions they have, and how we can help answer those questions for them.
Amazing. Love it. Quick and simple. And I know I wanted to talk a little bit more about what the outcomes are of good content marketing. And I know in our previous conversation, you came into your position and you helped really improve the website traffic that you were getting. And I think you mentioned even like doubling the traffic just in your first year. I'd love to learn more about how you got there and what are the things you implemented that really helped drive that success.
You bet. So when I was hired, I was brought in. As part of the interview, I asked what the goal of the position was and what my job was going to be. And they said they really wanted me to look at the data around all of our content, figure out what content was working and what content wasn't working and why, and then to help us make our content better. So I came in, I started looking through the analytics, started looking at all the data that we had collected and that all the platforms collect. And one of the first things that I saw was that our organic traffic, our traffic from search engines, was only about 40% of our traffic on our news center site, which is where all our original research is published, all our news stories are published. So I knew right away from, best practices industry experience that should at least be half of our traffic. So I knew that we had to do some SEO. I went in, ran some reports, figured out what content had a lot of potential to perform, went through, optimized those pieces of content. We saw a huge increase in organic traffic. And once we saw that happen, then Then it was a big ball that got rolling. They wanted more of that. They wanted us to figure out how to do that on a bigger scale. So it's really just looking at the data, figuring out where the opportunities are, and then trying to capture those opportunities with optimizing the content.
That's amazing. And did you take just a list of like your top viewed content pages? Is that where you got started? We're currently actually going through our own SEO audit right now, and this is just helpful for myself selfishly as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So lots of different ways to look at it, lots of different tools you can use. Google Analytics, we went through, started there, looked at organic traffic, which pages were driving traffic from search. Then we identified based on those, which of those pages was the most strategically important for us. We used a SEO tool like SEMrush or Moz to figure out exactly what keywords those pieces of content were ranking for. Then we went through, we optimized for those pieces of content and watched the traffic increase.
That's amazing. And I know you mentioned traffic as a goal or a metric that, you keep talking about. Are there other goals and metrics that maybe at the more business institutional level that people were looking at that were like, hey, let's reinvest, let's double down on this practice?
Yeah, absolutely. So in the news center department, we were primarily looking at the strategic goal for the news center is to increase brand awareness. So the best way to do that is by increasing overall traffic. The more eyes you get on your content, the more people that are going to know your brand. So for the news center site, it was really about the page views, the number of new users that we were attracting to the site. Once we started working with other groups across the institution, it's all driven by strategy. Like, for example, admissions wants more people, filling out application forms. So that's when you really get into, now we need those calls to action on all those pages. We want to make sure we're not just driving traffic, we're driving traffic that converts. We're helping fulfill those goals. So every group that we work with, every department, every school, very different, very important to understand their strategies and make sure that, the tactics that we use all align with those strategies.
Gotcha. And I know there's no way you could be doing this all by yourself, right? And I believe you created some sort of system and workshops to help tie everything together into one place. Can you give us a little more information about how you got to there and how to keep things running?
You bet. And I get asked this question a lot. I do some consulting, and people say, how can we get this program launched? How can we, convince leadership that SEO is important or that we need to be focused on content optimization and data and analytics? So what I did is I started off with a handful of stories. I picked about 10 high potential stories, optimized those, doubled, tripled the traffic on those. I went and showed our leadership. They said, yes, we need more of this. So then I created these keyword research workshops, these SEO presentations for our department. I trained our content creators on how to do their own keyword research. Then we were able to, do this on a much larger scale. They were able to add this to all of the new content they were creating. We were able to go back and more of us were in there actually optimizing existing content. We had the editors going in and helping out with that. And then once we, after the first year when we had doubled traffic on the news center site, then my boss came to us and said, we need to do this across the institution. So then I started doing these, keyword workshops with our medical center, with our business school, with the music school. So now we've got all these people across the campus who are all actively doing this. They're all, intentionally looking at the keywords. They're figuring out what questions people were asking before they even write the content. And that helps us inform what content we should create. And that's really helped, on a much larger scale to help, across the entire institution.
That's amazing. And I'm assuming that depending on the department, the goals also shift. So do you always start with, what are you trying to achieve? What are the problems that your audience are having? How does that look different from one department to the other? If you have some examples, that would really help as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's where we always start. We have, a series of audits that we run whenever someone comes to us and either they want a redesign of their website or they just want help optimizing their website. We always start off with a strategy. What are your, your department strategies, your school strategies? What are your goals? What are you trying to attain from a business standpoint? And then we look at what tactics we can employ on the website to, help reach those goals. And then the second audit that we always run is the user audit. So we really need to understand who are the users that are going to help that department, that school, attain their business goals, because that's where we want to focus all of our content creation. And then from there, then we get into, running the specific audits about, the content performance and the analytics and all the different parts and pieces that are the kind of the tiny details that you have to look at. But, if you're looking at advancement, you're looking at a much different audience. You're talking to a much different group, different age group, different socioeconomic group than you are if you're talking to undergraduate admissions or international global admissions. So every different group or team that we work with, every school that we work with, it's very important to start off high level. What are their goals? What are they trying to do? What does success look like for them on their website? And then who are they talking to? Who is the specific audience that this content is focused on, so that we use the right language, we present content that answers those questions that they're asking. So it's a very intentional process that we go through, but it's, like you said, it's different with every group.
That's interesting. And are there like owners of that with each department? Like, I'm trying to think structurally how this all works, because I feel like with such a big organization, like some of the goals might just get lost if there's just no ownership. And I'm just curious how things are organized to help keep that continuous process going.
Yeah, and one of the things that, taking these steps, and when you start working with, the head of marketing at the music school, or sometimes you're working with the deans at the different departments, you really get them thinking about things that they may not have thought of before, things that they may not have codified and written down. They know they have particular business goals, but until they actually list them all and start thinking about tactics and ways to attack those for a particular audience, it's not as concrete for them. But once we start going through this process, it helps expose other opportunities and other marketing tools that they can use and techniques that they can use, whether it's, direct marketing or, even print, all those different avenues and opportunities and tactics that we have at our disposal. But it all starts with, understanding the strategy and figuring out what they're trying to do and how we can help them get there.
Got it. No, that helps me understand. And I know we've been saying content a bunch today, but I'm curious, just to be very clear, are we talking mostly web pages, blogs, articles? Are we also talking some social media as well?
Everything. So it's all the content,
Everything.
Even internal communications. You have to think about what's the strategy, what are you trying to do with your employee newsletters, what are you trying to do with your weekly communications with your students, looking at all your different social platforms and looking at the data coming back from those. If you're seeing a drop on a particular social channel for performance around a particular type of content, you either need to change the language or not post that content there. There's a better place for that content, or you're not structuring your message properly for that audience that is on that platform.
Got it. And I could imagine, especially at a smaller institution, like reshifting this focus and strategy. Like the way you talk on Twitter is probably different than the way you talk in a press release, right? So like, are you able to educate and inform all those different, speaking and messaging styles to your creator workshops, or do you like try and prioritize and tackle certain channels of content first?
Well, so it's interesting because some aspects of it, some elements of it are very different from channel to channel. So the data that you're going to get looking at your website through Google Analytics, very different than the data you're going to get looking at the Twitter analytics that you can get access to from Twitter. But the things that always remain the same, the alignment with the strategy always remains the same. The intentionality of communicating to a particular audience always remains the same. And just making sure that your language aligns with your message, and just looking at overall performance. So you can track performance, you establish a baseline, and then, once you start looking at how the audience is engaging with those different pieces of content, we tag all of our content based on the strategy that we're trying to align that particular piece of content with. So then we can start looking, when we talk to these different groups, what content is working, what content isn't. But the one thing that is consistent across all the platforms is keyword research, because people are asking the same questions on Twitter that they're asking on YouTube, that they're asking on Google. The volume of those questions is very similar between those different platforms. The language they're using might be different. The audience that is asking those questions might be different. But a lot of those questions are exactly the same across platforms.
That's amazing. No, that's a really good point. I feel like I always think of channels so differently, and I got to reshift my focus a little bit and really be around the keyword research. I want to shift gears just a little bit. And I know you recently co-authored a book, and I'd love if you want to share a little bit more about that and what you talk about in your book as well. And also how you got there, because I like the story of, I think you read the first one and then you were a co-author on the second edition, which is really impressive.
Yeah, so I started off my career as a website developer, and not a particularly talented or happy website developer. It was just, a job that I managed to stumble into. And then in 2014, I read Epic Content Marketing by Joe Pulizzi, and my eyes were open. I was like, wow, you can market to people by just telling stories and answering questions that they have. And so I just became passionate about that. I really started focusing on the data side of that. The programming actually did help out with figuring out how to, create dashboards and track behind the scenes how content was performing. And I started going to Content Marketing World, which was a big conference that Joe had actually started. I would find him every year, go up to him, take a selfie with him, thank him for writing that book, tell him it changed my career path. I was so much happier now. And then I started presenting at that conference a couple years ago. And then last year, he and I were talking. We became friends. I kept telling him, Joe, you need to update this book. It still has Google Plus in there. It's old content. Needs to be updated. And he said, co-author it with me and we'll do it. So I said, absolutely. So it was great. When we started reworking the book, we figured we'd just throw everything out and start over new. And we realized that like 2/3 of what was in the book was still entirely applicable today. So we rewrote that. We came up with new case studies, new statistics around those areas. And then the new third of the book is all focused on content optimization, using data, AI, machine learning, Web3, communities. So all that content is new, and we really got to work, hand in hand on all of that. And everything that we wrote, everything that we worked on, all applies to any vertical market. So it applies in higher ed, defense contracting, manufacturing. It works for everybody, and we've got case studies and examples in there across all of those different channels and industries.
That's amazing. And you said, 2/3 of the book was left primarily unchanged. And does that kind of go back to my first question around content marketing, around telling a story and answering the questions people have, right?
Yep.
Gotcha.
It's all about thinking about your audience, thinking about what questions they're asking, how you can answer those questions, and really just the consistency of putting out content and being a trusted resource that, your users can find and they can come to.
That's amazing. I know you mentioned communities just now. I'd love to dive a little bit more into that. Where do you think communities fits into content marketing? And we'll just start there, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, every group, whenever you start off content marketing, you're really just, looking to attract an audience. You're promoting, you're out on social, you're just trying to increase the number of people who are reading your content, consuming your content.
Right.
Maybe they, subscribe to your newsletter or, read your social posts or follow you. once we start putting out content and creating that trust with our users, now that they see us as a resource, they know that we're answering questions, we're providing good value to them. Now they want to start engaging. Now they want to start asking questions. They want to start replying. They want to start sharing our content. They create these conversations back and forth. That's where you're really starting to convert them into this community of people who are all fans of yours, who believe in what you're talking about, who will go out and promote you to your friends. They kind of become your built-in influencers who will go out there and spread your content and, you know, talk with you and create new conversations. And that's really where I see the value of community. It's by creating these opportunities and these networks within your audience, within consumers of your content, that will help expand your opportunities and create new venues for you, new networks, new audiences that are eventually also going to convert into communities.
Amazing. And, you know, when I think of higher ed or universities, the community is the first thing that pops to mind, just in general, like as a definition outside of obviously education and curriculum. But like, how does anything maybe in the book relate to communities in higher ed?
Yeah, so lots of different communities exist within higher ed. I mean, you have communities within student populations, within your faculty,
Right.
But really where we start to see a lot more variety is communities that form around particular topics, because now you're not limited by, you know, age or status or any of these other kind of demographic. You're focusing on interest areas. So that's where you really start getting, you know, new, diverse thoughts, new creative solutions. We found some of these in research communities that are formed. You know, if you start getting researchers from around the world who are all coming in, working on the same project across all different, you know, age ranges and backgrounds and education levels, you're going to get all sorts of new ideas and new thoughts that you wouldn't get if you're just locked into, you know, a particular classroom looking for one solution.
Right. Gotcha. No, that brings it up a good thought. I'm a part of the High Ed Social Facebook group, which is a pretty active community within higher ed marketing community. Have you found any other ones maybe that are worth mentioning within higher ed for like marketing? So admissions, recruitment, alumni relations, career services. Is there one that I should maybe learn or join?
Yeah, so I'm also a board member for High Ed Web, Higher Education Web Professionals. So it covers the entire range of higher ed. They do a lot of online events. And like all of these higher ed communities, it's just a group. You go into the Slack channel, you post a question about a problem you're having. Somebody else has had that same problem. They come up with a solution for it. They're just willing to share it, tell you what tools they're using, what did or didn't work for them. So I got into that community back in 2019. I signed up as a speaker at one of the conferences they had, and within 15 minutes of being at the event among all these other people, I was like, this is a community I've got to get more involved in. So then I started volunteering, got onto the board, and have just been really supportive and just always surprised constantly at how open people are and how willing people are to share and just try to make things better, try to figure out better ways to do things that we're all working on.
That's amazing. Yeah, I'm also part of High Ed Web as well, and so it's been really impactful for me as an ed tech marketer to learn more about the industry. And we also attended their event in was it in Missouri, I believe? Yeah, this past last month. Yeah, and so that was really good. I'm just thinking back right now. They had an event recently on, I think, Data Studio or like content marketing reporting. I think you were on that meeting.
I was in there.
Oh, that's so funny.
I actually run
remember
the analytics community group, so yeah.
Oh, that's hilarious. Yeah, because I was like, I think Rochester was like an example in a dashboard that I looked at, and I was like, this is the dashboard that these schools are using. This is way more robust than I was expecting. And look who I'm talking to.
Oh, excellent.
That's hilarious. Okay. Oh, man. Finally connecting the dots here. Appreciate that. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Brian. It's so good to hear about SEO, how, it's you don't always have to create a different bucket for higher ed or different industries. You can all stem from one content marketing playbook, and it was really good to hear that. And it's amazing what you've really driven at your institution, increasing traffic and other goal metrics. So it's really, really impressive. Thanks so much for joining us today. I was wondering if our listeners would like to connect with you, if you had something that you'd like to share, a LinkedIn channel, a website. Yeah.
You bet. You can find me at brianwpiper.com. That's my website. I'm also on pretty much every social platform, Brian W. Piper. Always glad to talk, SEO, content optimization, content marketing, Web3. I think there's amazing opportunities in the future for the higher education space, for education in general, and really appreciate what you're doing and the messages you're bringing out and the people that you're interviewing on your show. So thanks for the opportunity.
Thanks, Brian. And to our audience, thank you as well for joining us today. Hope to see you on the next one.